Hello and welcome to the third instalment of our Ninja Turtles month. As you can see, we're actually playing a Game Boy game this time round, and it's the third Game Boy Turtles game, otherwise known as Radical Rescue. But joining me once again for some more retro-related fun is my co-host Robin Parker.
Hey there.
So, two things you might notice. One, that says Super Game Boy 2 in the bottom left of that. This is actually a not so well known Japanese second edition of the Super Game Boy that had a few extra features, including a link cable add-on. But the other thing you may notice is, well, it's a turtle game like no other, as you'll see very very soon. It's almost like a kind of a proto Castlevania style game, a Metroidvania if you will. It's before Symphony of the Night in terms of Konami games, but it's very simple but quite interesting as we'll go through.
It's a real oddity of a game. I mean, it's one which certainly flew under my radar completely, and it's just not really what you would have expected from a Turtles game.
No, I mean the first two Turtles games were essentially side-scrolling kind of action platformers with quite chunky graphics, and yeah, they're okay. They made the first game in particular made the mistake of having a character sprite that was far too large for the small Game Boy screen, so you could never really see what was going on.
No, it's I think they had to sort of really work hard on getting the right balance between the sprites and the action on screen to sort of match up, so you could actually tell what was going on. It's I think in this Radical Rescue they've done a fair job of that, really, because I mean, you think of a game like Mario Land 1, I mean, the sprites are ridiculously small, you really can't tell what's going on. This Radical Rescue is not as bad, it's quite good in that respect.
Yeah, they've definitely evened it out a bit more. We've got this little intro sequence, which is quite long, but if you haven't already guessed, it's you play Michelangelo at the beginning, and you basically have to find the other turtles.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice little feature, because as you go along you recruit more of the turtles back and therefore can get their different skills as you go along.
Yeah, and as you can see, it's a very very long intro for a Game Boy game, but you can skip it, but we're just letting you enjoy it for yourselves. So we
Getting
go
into it now.
Of course, we're already starting with the classic Ninja Turtles cartoon theme tune, which is always a good thing for a Ninja Turtles game, although not many of these games actually had the theme tune.
Yeah, it's strange when games and film and television related games have done that. They haven't managed to get the theme tune right. It's nice to see one which finally does.
Yeah. As you can see, Michelangelo's ability is to glide down using his nunchucks like a helicopter.
Yeah, and as we get later into the game, we'll see that, like for example, Raphael can hide in his shell so he can get through small passages, and Leonardo can drill through the floor using his swords, and it just gives you you get to choose which different turtles can tackle different situations.
Yeah, and then that encourages the Metroidvania style gameplay even further.
Yeah, it's a bit more thought has to go into it. It's not just a random side scroller where you're just beating up everything you see. You've got to have a bit of thought as to how you tackle the levels.
Yeah. As you just saw, when I was on the ladder, I actually threw shurikens, and that's just something you can do whenever you're on a ladder. So it's unusual for a game to give you any sort of offensive abilities when you're on a ladder, and for a game like this where you have flying bat enemies that come after you, that is so handy.
Yeah, it's really it's a nice bit of freedom for a game like this. A lot of titles are very rigid in their control, whereas this one's quite flexible, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean the controls in this, the control of the Turtles does actually feel pretty good. It's certainly a lot better than the Nintendo Entertainment System game. Obviously, you have those annoying enemies like the bats that keep flying at you, and it's almost like a Castlevania game. And unavoidable enemies like that one that just hit me as I was trying to glide over a spike pit.
Yeah, and you had no chance of seeing him in advance. He's just there.
No, of course. And some enemies do actually respawn when you go off screen and come back, which is even more annoying. So just avoiding these little lasers here. Again, they hurt. Every so often you'll defeat an enemy and they will drop pizza, but other than that, yeah, health is actually relatively scarce in this game. I picked up a full peach earlier, and that will basically refill my energy when I die. And as you just see, I just picked up a bit of pizza. Sometimes it's worth actually going in between two areas and just grinding away at enemies until you get enough health to carry on, which is a bit annoying, but at least it is possible to do that.
Just another little exploit.
It is. I'm not adverse to exploits for games like this that are really too difficult at times.
I mean, do you know what's the save system like on this game?
It's a password system, so there's no battery backup, and basically at particular points in the game you'll be given a password, and you'll get a password when you die as well, and that will basically keep track of how much life you have, because you can actually pick up life upgrades. It'll remember what turtles you've taken, and the only thing it doesn't remember is what items you're carrying, unless they're special items like keys and whatnot.
It's still a fairly robust save system for a Game Boy game.
Yeah, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and I mean the fact that it traces your life bar and everything like that is pretty good for a Game Boy. Really, not a great deal of Game Boy games allowed anything in that matter. Really,
we're just fighting the first boss of the game, which is actually really hard. It's a very steep learning curve in the beginning, and it took me more than a few attempts to kill this boss.
And you'll probably notice it's not one of the most well-known Turtles bad guys, as are none of the bosses in the game, aside from Shredder himself, are really any of the really big bad guys.
No, which is a bit unusual. Although I think Leatherhead is in this at some point. I could be wrong.
Oh yeah, so one of the more well-known ones. But I think you've got ones such as Scratch, Dirtbag, and then just one of the random Triceratons, which it's a bit of a strange choice, but I think towards the end of the Turtles cartoon run, they did start introducing more of these new bad guys, so maybe it's to tie in a bit more with that, as it was a later game as well.
Possibly, and this was 1993, and I think by that time, the whole Turtles, the original cartoon series, started to wind down at that time. I mean, Shredder was nowhere to be seen in a lot of those later episodes, and it was had to have other enemies to fill the gap. Yeah,
they were out in space a lot of the time dealing with aliens and things like that by that point, weren't they?
And then having problems with them mutating too much and turning into giant beasts and things like that.
It all went a bit mad towards the end.
It did, like most cartoon series that go on for too long. As you can see, this enemy is really tough. For only the first boss in the game. I mean, I said we've been playing this for about 8 minutes, and we've already come to a very tough enemy.
Yeah, and it's quite a long boss battle really as well. You've hit him quite a few times, and it's really grinding him down.
Yeah, I mean his energy bar is almost twice as large as mine is, and he's really difficult to avoid. Some of those attacks are very difficult, but somehow I did it after I think it was about 10 attempts. So we just got a key.
And of course, like you said, because it's a Metroidvania sort of title, you have a lot of this backtracking and going backwards and forwards. You don't just beat the boss and walk past him and that's that. You've got to your objective. You've still got to go around and explore a bit more.
Yeah, and you have this map which is actually quite useless. It kind of gives you a general idea of where to go, but it doesn't actually tell you where the rooms are or anything. It just gives you dots to note things of significance like power-ups or your fellow turtles.
Yeah, those dots could mean anything. You do really have to explore and check what everything is, don't you?
Yeah, and the rooms aren't even marked out properly on the map either, which makes things very confusing.
Just for random oblongs.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it's certainly not quite as hard as some of the other Turtles games.
No, as I say, it is no NES game, but it's not to say it isn't unfair. It has that kind of retro kind of school of bad design in places.
Yeah. At least all you can say is at least when those random enemies do appear and attack you out of nowhere, it's you don't get knocked back like in Castlevania where you could not get knocked down into pits and stuff. That doesn't seem to be a problem really.
Or once again like the original Turtles game on the NES.
Oh, of course.
I mean, that is the poster child for you know, what could have been a good game, but it was just ruined by just terrible design. I'm just trying to find where I've got going next. Really, again, it's like a Metroidvania. It's if you're not really clear where to go, you can spend a lot of time wandering and not knowing what to do next.
I mean, that's one of the most interesting points, I suppose, because it makes it play a completely different style of game than what the other Turtles titles have been, and it might not, maybe it doesn't work 100%, but it's nice to get a bit of variety in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very ambitious game for the time period and for the system itself. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the other Metroidvania style games. I mean, Metroid 2 was on the Game Boy, which is probably the least well known of all the Metroid games. It's again, it suffers from having a sprite that's too large, but yeah, it was a quality Metroid game on the system. But other than that, in this game, I can't really think of any other similar games.
No, not on the original Game Boy. It was, as you say, ambitious, and unfortunately, I don't think many people knew about it, so it just probably didn't get the sort of attention it perhaps deserved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think around 1993. I mean, obviously the Game Boy had been around for about 4 or 5 years at that time. I wouldn't say it was losing popularity, because I think in 94, 95 they've begun to bring the coloured versions of the Game Boy, as in the different coloured casings, plus the Game Boy Pocket, and all that was even before Pokemon in
exactly
96, 97. So.
Yeah, when Pokemon came along, of course, it went mad again. But yeah, there was certainly a bit of a lull, sort of in the early to mid '90s, around this point. So maybe it just suffered a bit because of that as well. But it's a shame, because it's certainly more successful than the other Game Boy outings in terms of graphically, I'd say gameplay-wise, even as well. Really.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it controls well. Yeah, the levels are designed relatively well. It's just the enemy placement that I think creates most of the problems. Yeah,
just a bit unforgiving in the way in which they attack you and where they come from. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing worse than dying and have to go back quite a fair chunk of the game.
Cool, of course, yeah.
And it would help if the map was actually helpful.
Yeah, it's. I mean, when you're just having to go backwards and forwards and try your best to work out exactly what it means.
Yeah, I mean, the game doesn't really give you any idea of how to do any of your abilities either. I had to find out a lot of this information on the internet through facts but what I noticed was that there's very little information about this game. It's very unheard of. It's relatively rare, I think. I mean, I tried to, I was looking at eBay prices for this, and it still goes for it can go for quite a lot of money.
It's just a bit of a collector's piece.
Yeah, it can be, especially new in box.
Perhaps this will encourage more players to give it a try and see what it's all.
I mean, it's definitely worth playing if you fancy something a bit different on the Game Boy. It's worth trying to track this down in one way or another. Obviously, this is the kind of game that's never ever going to be re-released, which is a shame, really. I mean, I would have loved to maybe see an updated version of this game in the future, but that's never going to happen. No,
it's just not. I mean, just let alone all the problems with licensing issues. It's just a game which hasn't even had really a modicum of success at any stage is going to be a difficult sell for anybody.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to find my way to the next area, but it's, as I say, it's so easy to get lost, and there's nothing worse than getting killed after an hour of trying to find your way around an environment.
Yeah, so you have to balance your want to explore with your need to survive as well.
As you can see, I've just lost my energy, but luckily I had a pizza to replenish it all.
Even these, I suppose there's a lot of repetition of bad guys in this game as well. You haven't exactly encountered a great variety of bad guys yet, but I suppose it's still only in an early area. But
Yeah, I mean, this is still very early on in the game. I mean, I did have a look at later areas of the game, and some of those enemies are very tough. They're kind of like these robot droids that kind of run around and take a lot of hits to kill. But yeah, there is a variety later on in the game. But as I say, this is the first portion of the map, and I say they try and keep it as easy as possible. Just looking at this, that's not the case. It's just we haven't got to the more tricky enemies yet.
the exploration is keeping you busy enough already.
Yeah,
It's hard bad guys.
It's very easy to get lost.
At least you've got enough pizza.
Yeah, more pizza is good. And again, they all respawn once you exit the area, so you can do some more grinding for some of those pieces.
So that more or less has continued in effect, letting you continue from where exactly the point when you lose your health. Quite an interesting idea, because it means you're never taken out of the game when you die or lose your health.
No, I mean, if you completely die, then you go to a continue screen. I think you have 3 continues, and then that's it. You're back to the title screen. But as I say, you've got those passwords which give you a bit of a breathing room. I couldn't imagine trying to finish this game in one sitting. It's quite a huge game.
Yeah, it looks massive. I mean, as you say, you haven't really got very far at all, and there's masses left to do.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen people do speed runs of this in about half an hour, 40 minutes, and I guess that would take an extreme amount of practice to remember the map and the locations of all the items and everything. But that's not to say it hasn't been done.
No.
The internet proves that there are willing people out there that will spend a lot of time to beat even the most obscure of games.
Yeah, people will want to get records on anything, really, won't
Yeah. As we struggle to find the next area, I think that's it for this week's episode. Thank you very much for watching. You can follow us on Twitter as always at the Retrocast. You can check us out on GodisaGeek.com, because that is the site we are affiliated with, of course. You can listen to the Godcast every Monday morning. You can listen to Saint and Greensy podcast every Wednesday, and you can watch Colin O'Hearn's Dirt Sheet on Sundays, and of course Ding on Saturdays as well, I believe. But until next time, we'll be covering yet another Turtles game. We shall see you around.
See you guys.
Bye.